all-knowing and all-powerful, starting with the elderly wolf uncle. Chapter 59. He had already taken Chen Tian's attack. Still can't. Chen Tian on the other side just smiled. Just as Clark guessed whether his next attack would be a punch or a kick, at which angle. But seeing Chen Tian's upper body suddenly leaning forward, he actually slammed his head directly. Clark didn't expect that the other party would actually use this move, and he couldn't react, and his whole face was hit hard and Venus appeared. The body was even hit to the ground. The ground behind him was smashed and collapsed due to the huge impact of his body, giving birth to countless cracks and splashing earth and rubble. Ugh. Clark was dizzy and couldn't help but let out a muffled snort, and when he came back to his senses, his body suddenly tensed to the extreme. Chen Tian had already raised his foot and stepped towards him, as if he was not ready to give him breathing room. Rumble. Chen Tian stepped down. The wind is sweeping and stirring. I am afraid that even steel will step on it. Faced with this scene, Clark couldn't care less, and quickly used his explosive super speed to flash away. Rumble. Chen Tian's foot stepped on the empty place, and the ground directly cracked the rock formation, and one after another deep ravines suddenly spread out. Clark looked at this scene and was afraid for a while. If he was hit like this, even if he would not be seriously injured, he would never be easy. Suddenly, he felt scared. A wisp of fear spread from the bottom of my heart. In the previous encounters, the feeling of powerlessness that had repeatedly fallen into the downwind came to the surface, devouring him and suppressing his heart. Perhaps Clark had never really been injured before. But this time is different. Again and again, they were hit hard without resistance, and all attempts to fight back were in vain. This feeling constantly urges the cowardice in the heart. In the past, Clark chose to avoid trouble, not because he was afraid, but because he was unwilling to hurt others. But this time he really felt that he had a feeling that he could not face it, and instinctively wanted to escape. He felt from the bottom of his heart that Chen Tian's strength was above him. I can't beat him. Clark's expression was complicated, and there was a slight shake in the bottom of his heart, and he even took a step back unconsciously. Coward, don't hide. Chen Tian plucked his foot from the deep pit, raised his eyes to look at Clark, and realized that the latter was already timid and said coldly. What he wants is to anger Clark, spur potential, and better replication. It's not just about being afraid of the other party. Next second, rumble. Chen Tian's figure disappeared in place, and the ground on which he stood exploded into a deep pit. He had already summoned super speed and flashed towards Clark. However, Clark also activated his super speed and fled into the distance. Evenson panicked and chose a direction and ran straight away, ignoring the intersection of the trees in front of them, and hit a straight line. Boom, 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 half of the golden sunset. In the woods, both figures burst out with power that exceeded the limits of ordinary people countless times, turning into two afterimages and speeding forward. A figure chased behind, and the other smashed trees one by one and fled in a hurry. Both figures were running wildly, leaving deep pits in the places they passed. Like a giant beast passing through, endless dust and fog floated above the trees. In the beginning, the speed of the two sides is not much different. Pity. Over time, Clark's speed slowed down significantly. After all, although he has always had good physical strength, after a long time of catching up, coupled with his own lack of combat experience. But fatigue has already appeared for a long time. And the other side, Chen Tian was different from him. The former has been at the bottom for many years, for more than 10 years, plus the fighting skills from Batman. In the process of catching up, he often predicts Clark's next move. Several times, Clark was almost overturned by Chen Tian when he found an opportunity. It also speeds up Clark's entry into a state of fatigue. Damn it, you can't fight, you can't escape. Quote. Clark also noticed that his state began to decline, and Chen Tian behind him seemed to have no fatigue at all. This made the cowardice in his heart even heavier. Even the raised steps felt much heavier. Just when Clark's mind faltered, his speed slowed for a moment. Chen Tian's eyes flashed, and he keenly seized the opportunity. Rumble. His thigh muscles suddenly swelled, and he stepped on it suddenly, and he could even see a circle of earth ripples visible to the naked eye, spreading out from the ground. The next moment, Chen Tian's figure flashed, and he actually caught up with Clark's side. Have you started to run away? Chen Tian disdained to drink cold. A sudden punch slammed into him. This time Clark didn't have any chance to react. I only felt that the huge force was banging on my body. He only felt that in the severe pain that spread throughout his body, the surrounding scene suddenly turned into a blurry afterimage. Strong feeling of weightlessness. Clark heard the roaring wind in his ears. He was bombarded out again. Rumble. This time, he directly jumped 100 meters and crashed into a mountain. Countless rock fragments splashed, tumbling down, directly burying Clark in it, and the billowing smoke rolled up like a thick wolf smoke. It's a pity. Seeing this scene, Chen Tian was a little disappointed. Although he had tried a lot just now, Clark's potential had not been unleashed and other abilities had not been unleashed. Perhaps it's time to stop there. Quote. Chen Tian's face was helpless, and he shook his head. Clark, this kid has been crushed by me. If he continues, I'm afraid his personality will have to be distorted. Quote. Thinking about it, he sighed. Then, the pile of rocks that buried Clark suddenly burst open, splashing rubble. Clark crawled out of it in embarrassment and collapsed to the ground. Few one by one, he lay on his back and looked at the sky, gasping for breath, his chest rising and falling violently. Clark was furious. Unprecedented anger. It was not simply anger towards Chen Tian, but emotions towards his own strength.